Hi everybody, welcome back to Think Outside the Board. I'm your host Brian Toohey, and today I'm back with the second May Kickstarter update. So this is the late May Kickstarter update. And in this video, I'm going to talk about 9 different currently running Kickstarters that will complete their funding between May 17th and May 31st. Later on in the video, I will be talking more briefly about the games that I personally backed from the last video, as well as the games that I've acquired into my collection in that time period, and the games that I've played. This video, it's kind of sad. I've only actually played one game in the last couple of weeks. I played it a bunch of times though, so I'll talk about that in a little more detail. And then finally at the end, I'm going to give a little bit of a channel update, just talking about what's going to be coming up for the channel as it continues to evolve. Now, when I'm talking about the currently running Kickstarters, the first thing that I'm going to mention is the date that they fund, the date that they tentatively will arrive in your home, the complexity level, player count, and potential risk involved with the Kickstarter. I'll tell you a little bit about the game. I'll talk briefly about the publishing company, the designers and the artists, and kind of what they've done previously, so that if you don't know them by name, you have an idea maybe of what they've done that could potentially interest you in the game. If you know, oh, the artist on this is the same artist from Everdell, who I don't know the name of, but now I know, and now I want to back that game. And that actually will happen in one of these games later in the video. So we'll talk about those, then I'll kind of break down the pledge levels, and that's it. Then we'll move on to the next game. So that's kind of the format. Also, I will mention at the top the amount that each project is currently funding for. Let's get started with the first Kickstarter that is currently running that you may want to back. That is Dominations Deluxe. Now, this is going to fund on May 18th. It will deliver tentatively in May 2022. It's essentially a civilization game that's kind of abstract, and it uses things like area majority, set collection, tech tracks, and tile placement. Now, Tom Vassell really likes the game. It hasn't been a huge hit, I think, because it's not really the new shiny. If you look at it component-wise, it feels more like a game maybe from like 10 years ago. Like a very cardboard-heavy Queen Games game. But they're now doing a Kickstarter again, and they're doing kind of some deluxe upgrades and things like that. So if you really like this game, even though it doesn't have the most advanced components, this is a way to get the best version of the game that probably is going to exist. Because it's a game that's pre-existed, I like to mention that it's a 7.6 on Board Game Geek. So it is a solid game. It may be not in the 8s or the 9s, but it's still a very solid score. So you know that this game has some history behind it of being a decent game. It's not an unknown quantity like a lot of Kickstarters. So this game is published by Holy Grail Games. They've done Dominations and also Museum and Rallyman GT. Those are kind of their big 3. It is designed by Eric Dubois and Olivier Mellison, and their big things are Dominations and Museum. Now, there are 5 different artists working on this game. Some of them have worked more extensively than others on board games. There's Florian Habak, Loic Muzi, who's done Fireteam Zero, Mythic Battles Pantheon, and Rallyman GT. Agath Pitti, Amber Sharf, who's worked previously on Rabbit Island, Explore, Build, Conquer, and Florian Stitz, who worked on The Lord of the Rings, the card game, and Nightfall. Now, Dominations was on Kickstarter before, and right now there exists the base game and 4 expansions. There's also this thing through this Kickstarter called the Empire Pack that you can pick up, and there is a deluxe slipcase. Now, the deluxe slipcase is kind of like a deluxe box, the kind of thing that you fit everything in, except it's just a slipcase, so you'll be sliding your other expansions into it. So if you have everything, it'll fit everything snugly into it. But it is a slipcase, it's not a box, so unless you have everything, it probably won't work so well. Now, the big thing in this campaign is called Rise and Fall, which is a new expansion. This is the new stuff. And this is going to include 2 new modules, so kind of 2 mini expansions that you can throw into the game. It's also going to include solo play upgraded from what had previously been available. And it will include some things like wooden components if you want to upgrade your game and make it nicer than all that cardboard. There'll be some corrected cards from the previous versions and something called monument storage. It's like a separate little thing that you can keep the monuments in from the game, which are these miniatures. So it'll give you a storage solution for those. Now, there's only 2 pledge levels in this one. So there is a $43 pledge level for returning backers. That will get you the slipcase and Rise and Fall, which is the new stuff. It's the 2 new modules and kind of all the little extras. But that assumes that you already have Dominations and the previous 4 expansions. If you pledge the Imperator pledge for $182, that will get you everything. So it'll get you the Dominations base, the previous 4 expansions, the new Rise and Fall with the 2 new kind of mini expansion modules and all of the upgrades and stuff, and the slipcase. Next up is Dice Theme Park, which will fund on May 20th. It will tentatively deliver February 2022. This is a medium-heavy game. It's supposed to be a little bit heavier than Dice Hospital, and it's sort of a spiritual sequel to it. It has the same artist, so there is that through line. It's the same publisher. They're billing it as a sort of spiritual sequel, but it's different designers. But like I said, they do have the artist, and it's the same publisher, so there's that through line there. Think of it as a medium-heavy game, plays 1 to 4 players, and I would put this on the medium-low risk. Now, their funding goal was $20,000. They're currently at $165,000, which is 8 times their funding goal. And this is a dice manipulation game, which is going to include mechanics like action drafting, tile placement, and worker placement with dice workers. Now, it's published by Alley Cat Games, who previously have done Chocolate Factory, of course, Dice Hospital, and Welcome to Dino World. And this one is designed by Adrian Adamescu and Daryl Andrews. They worked together on Sagrada. That's kind of their biggest hit. But Adrian also did Before the Earth Explodes and Speakeasy Blues, and Daryl's done Bosk and City of Gears. And the artist, Sabrina Miraman, is the carryover from Dice Hospital, and she's worked on Dice Hospital, Photosynthesis, and Quadropolis. And her art, the same kind of art that she did on Dice Hospital and Quadropolis, is very much on display here, and I think it's a great style for this kind of game. It's really warm and inviting, and it feels kind of family-friendly, even though, as I said, this game is getting a little higher on the complexity level. Now, if you're thinking of pledging this one, for $56, you can get the base game edition, which is going to include the base game, a promo pack, the stretch goals, and exclusive content. So just kind of everything you need from a base game edition. For $82, you're going to get the deluxe edition. Now, what that's going to add are these monorail miniatures and these little monorail inserts that will work with the miniatures. It adds on another mechanic. There's also 2 more mini expansions, a deluxe add-ons box, and it has things in it like extra tiles and cards, and also some solo components. So it's sort of a grab bag of things, the deluxe edition. It's going to give you some extra mini expansions and just some upgraded components. Now, if you want to go higher than that, if you're maybe interested in picking up some Dice Hospital stuff, for $99, you can get the deluxe edition, but you're also going to throw in a new game, which is called Dice Hospital ER Emergency Roll. Now, this is a Dice Hospital themed flip, roll, and write game. So I think you're going to be using both cards and dice in it. It has different designers than the designers of Dice Theme Park. So the designers on the roll and write game, or the flip, roll, and write game, are Matthew Dunstan, who's worked on adventure games The Dungeon, Elysium, Monumental, and Pioneer Days, as well as Brett Gilbert, who's worked on Chocolate Factory, Elysium, and Mandala. And then the artist is Jackie Davis, who I love, and she's worked on Colosseum, Cubitos, Euphoria, Build a Better Dystopia, Ex Libris, Stockpile, and Viticulture and Viticulture Essential Edition. So that $99 pledge will get you that roll and write game as well as the deluxe edition of Dice Theme Park. If you want to go even higher, you can pledge the $226 pledge, and that's sort of an all-in. That's going to get you all the stuff that we've talked about previously, plus all of the previous Dice Hospital content. So you're going to get the Dice Hospital game with the deluxe add-ons. So it'll be the Kickstarter version, deluxe version of Dice Hospital, and the Kickstarter edition of Community Care. So if you've played Dice Hospital a little bit, or you think you might like it, and you really just want to go whole hog, that $226 pledge is going to be your pledge level that will kind of get you everything Dice Hospital related. And again, this will fund February 20th, so set your clocks if you want to get in before it funds, and will tentatively deliver in February 2022. Also on May 20th is Florence, and this will tentatively deliver in January 2022. Now, the funding goal for this one was $35,000. They're sitting at $85,000, which is about 2.5 times their funding goal. This is going to be a medium-heavy game for 1 to 5 players, and the risk on this, I think, is medium-low because it's by Brain Crack Games, who have already produced 2 other games in this kind of spiritual series, Ragusa and Venice. I think they're both really good games, and I'm excited about Florence personally. It is designed by a different team, though. Dean Morris, who did Pacific Rails Inc. previously, and Dan May is the artist, and he's worked on Black Orchestra, Everdell, and Nothing Personal. And this is a worker placement game that uses action points, but it's different. It's got kind of like this rondelle sort of shape in the middle of the board, and there are these 3 non-player characters that are going to be driving around this board in counterclockwise, I think, around this circle. So they'll be in different locations every round, and they're going to reward workers with gifts and things, and they each have different personalities and their mechanics work differently, so it's kind of interesting and fascinating. The components on this game also look very different. They're these big carriages that are going to be on the board, and they're very colorful. And then the meeples in this are differently shaped than anything I've seen before. It is kind of taking place in Florence during like the Italian Renaissance, and a big part of this game is bragging. So you're going to be bragging to these nobles, these Italian nobles, about how great your family is and trying to get in with this ruling aristocratic family. So there are kind of these meeples that look like, Italian Renaissance, dressed up, down on bended knee, and they're trying to brag, and it looks really cool and kind of unlike anything I've seen before. And I do have a lot of faith in it because it is thematically related to Ragusa and Venice in this same kind of spiritual series. Now, if you want to pledge this one, for $64, you can pledge Florence. And there aren't a lot of pledge levels here, so you're not getting like a deluxe or a basic game. You are just getting the game as intended. Boom, $64. Now, if you don't have the other games in the series and you want to get both of them, you can pledge $170, and that will get you all 3 games. Also, through this campaign, there is an expansion for Venice called Da Vinci's Workshop. Looks pretty good. I like Venice. It's not available in any of the pledges. So just know that if you want that, you're going to have to add it on. And I think it's about $23. It's listed in pounds, but I think it translates to about $23. So if you have Venice and you want the expansion, you can add that on. If you're getting Venice and you also want to get the expansion, you can add that on as well. Again, this is going to fund May 20th and hopefully, tentatively, deliver January 2022. From there, we have the new Chip Theory Games game. It's called Hoplomachus Victorum, and there's a little story behind Hoplomachus. We'll get to that in just a minute. But this will also fund on May 20th, so there's going to be a lot of competition, I think, for your wallet on the 20th, if you're interested in all these games. And this one will deliver in March of 2022. Their funding goal was $50,000. They are now sitting at $618,000, which is 12 times their funding goal. I think that may be a little bit more than Chip Theory Games was expecting, perhaps, because while most of their games usually fund very, very well, this is sort of a reworking of their first big game, their previous game to Too Many Bones. And Too Many Bones, I think, really exploded and blew up their company in a huge way. And ever since then, all of the stuff that they've made has had this enormous level of quality, from double-stitched neoprene mats and these really nice poker chips that you play with, just some of the highest component quality in board game. Now, this game, like their other games, is going to be heavy. It's going to be a 1-player game and a 1 to 4-player game because there's actually 2 different things involved in this Kickstarter. And the risk level on this is low. I really trust Chip Theory Games. So let's talk about Hoplomachus for a second. This is the game that they kind of made their name with, at least until Too Many Bones, which vaulted them to an even kind of higher level of publisher and designer. But this is kind of what they were cutting their teeth on before that. And there were 3 different games. So there was the original game called The Lost Cities, and then they did a Rise of Rome follow-up and an Origins follow-up. And it came out in that order over a period of a few years. And these games are essentially arena fighters. The first game played 1 to 3 players. The 2 kind of follow-ups were 1 to 2 players. But the quality just wasn't as high as the things that came later because they were improving as they went. And so now they have this game in their catalog, but it's not really quite on the same level as their other games, which are Cloudspire, Too Many Bones Undertow, and the upcoming Burn Cycle. And all of those games are designed by the brothers team of Josh and Adam Carlson. And on Hoplomachus, the original 2 Hoplomachus games, Josh did the art. On the third game, he was joined on the art by Anthony Letourneau, who has just taken over full art duties for all of their other games. So if you like Chip Theory games, if you like Too Many Bones, Cloudspire, Burn Cycle, and that art style, that is Anthony Letourneau. And he is working exclusively on the new stuff. I don't think Josh is going to have his fingers on the art side of these new games. So the first thing that's available and the main thing in this campaign is Hoplomachus Victorum, which is the game that's mentioned in the title. Now that is a solo-only game. And that's kind of what you're pledging through this thing. This is the main point of this campaign. However, Chip Theory is taking this opportunity to go back and rework those first 2 games in the series. And so they're going to be offering also a remastered version of Hoplomachus, and it will include the content from the first 2 games, The Lost Cities and Rise of Rome. Now, why aren't they also including Origins in that? I'm not sure. I can speculate that maybe it would be too much for the box, and maybe their plan is, if this does well, to do another Kickstarter in a year or 2 and combine Origins with maybe new content. So maybe there'll be like another kind of double box that will put those 2 things together. But I'm just speculating. But they do tend to really support their products. I think that's in evidence right now, how they're supporting a product that's kind of an old, almost outdated product by bringing it new. So I would expect these guys to continue to put out stuff for it. So I would assume that Origins and probably new content will be down the line. Anyway, Chip Theory Games, Josh and Adam Carlson, Anthony Letourneau, all of these entities have worked on all of the Chip Theory games, and this is kind of their thing. They're in this company together, working on these projects, and not really doing much else. This is where all their energy is going. So for $95, you can get this new solo game, Hoplomachus Victorum. For $125, you can get the remastered version of the original 2 Hoplomachus games. It's just going to be called Hoplomachus Remastered. And then if you want to get everything, there's a pledge level for $255, so it'll get you the Arena Fighter game, the remastered thing, the solo game, and then they're also throwing in premium health chips and a bag for the chips. And these guys make some of the prettiest, most well-produced games in the business. So if you've got the cheddar to back this in full and you like these kinds of games, if you've looked at it, no one seems to regret these games. They're just so well produced. Anyway, Hoplomachus Victorum, May 20th at Funds, March 20th, 22, it delivers tentatively. From there, we're going to move to Angel Fury, The Battle for a Human Soul. Gosh, that's a name, isn't it? Now that is going to fund on May 21st, tentatively deliver March 2022. It is a medium heavy-ish game for 1 to 4 players, and I think the risk on this one is low. It's being published by Indie Game Studios, which is an entity that has combined indie boards and cards and Stronghold games. And Indie Game Studios, this kind of combined venture, has previously done Kickstarter campaigns for a revised version of Daimaker and Not Alone Sanctuary, Tribune, and most recently Crescent City Cargo. So they've done some things, and they've got these 2 parent companies behind them that are both well-known, solid companies that have produced some really good games. Now this looks like a Euro-y miniatures war game with sort of a biblical theme. I mean, we've all seen a lot of games, miniature war games that are kind of Greek themed, or all of these Norse gods, all of these kinds of things. But this is the first one I've seen in a long time that uses kind of biblical mythology. That could be a selling point because the theme's a little different. Or if you really don't want anything biblical, I suppose that could be a point of contention, but this is what this is. So it's going to use deck construction and action points, and it is a miniatures war game, but it feels very Euro-y. It is designed by Daniel Frixelius, and that name may sound a little familiar to you. Daniel has previously worked on Fleets, the Pleiad Conflict, and Wilderness, but his brother Jacob Frixelius is the designer of Terraforming Mars, and Jacob is going to be working on the solo mode for this game. Daniel has also done art in the past on some games. He's worked on After the Virus, Space Station, and Wilderness, and those are games that he's produced with his brothers, but they haven't been huge hits in the way that Terraforming Mars was a huge hit. But the thing is, these brothers, there are actually 5 of them. 5 Frixeliuses, all working together on this game in different capacities. Some as CEO, some as graphic design. Jacob, obviously the Terraforming Mars designer, he's probably had the biggest success. He's doing the solo mode here. So Daniel has done the art on some of those smaller games that he's worked on in the past. And Isaac is also going to be doing the art on this one as well. And Isaac did the art on Terraforming Mars, as well as Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition and Brawling Barons. So this is a brothers production. It's got the backing of Indie Game Studios, which is Stronghold Games and Indie Boards and Cards. Like I said, the risk on this is low. Now, there's only one pledge level for this game. So if you take a look at it, if you think it looks good to you, it's $120 for the pledge. That's it. It's just the one pledge level. I think at the start of this, I forgot to mention their funding goal was $20,000. They're sitting at $23,000, so they've funded. From my knowledge evaluating Kickstarters, I know that Kickstarters typically do a third of their business in the last 24 hours. So I think they're fine. They're probably going to end up in the $30,000 to $35,000 range when they fund, which is, almost double their $20,000, 1.5 times to double. So it's going to go, and $120. Funds May 21st, delivers March 2022. From there, we're going to move on to Vivid Memories. And this is also a 5/21 funder. It will deliver in October 2021, so a little sooner than some of these games we've been talking about. It'll deliver by the end of this year. It is a little less going on production-wise, I think, maybe, which is why they're able to get it out sooner. Now, this had a funding goal of $25,000. They're currently sitting at $70,000, so about 3 times the funding goal. It is a medium-light game designed for 2 to 4 players, and I think the risk on this is medium-low. It is an abstract strategy game, and it uses kind of tile placement, and players have player boards that look like people's brains. And so you're going to be inserting these tiles into the brain and then kind of moving them around to score in different ways as the game goes on. Component-wise, it looks really cool. And just design-wise, it looks really neat and cool to me. It's a medium-light game, I think. It could be a little crunchy and get into the medium-heavy area with some of the decisions, but I think it's more of a medium-light game. And it looks like a game that's going to be very appealing to kind of families and stuff like that. I think it's going to play well kind of at all ages and player ability levels. This one is published by Floodgate Games, who's previously done Bosk, Legacy Gears of Time, and Sagrada. So Sagrada is their big one. And it's designed by Matthew Dunstan, who I mentioned a little earlier in this video. He's also working on that Dice Hospital ER, the flip roll and write. So he is designing Vivid Memories along with Brett Gilbert. Again, they're working on both of those games together. Matthew Dunstan, I'll just kind of repeat what I said back in Dice Theme Park. He worked on adventure games The Dungeon, Elysium, Monumental, and Pioneer Days. And Brett Gilbert worked on Chocolate Factory, Elysium, and Mandala. So if you like Elysium, it is that design team that's working on both the Dice Hospital flip roll and write game and Vivid Memories. And the art on this is by Andrew Bosley, who is awesome. He is the Everdell artist, but he's also worked on Blood Bowl Team Manager, the card game, Citadels, Love Letter, Mission Red Planet, the second edition, and Tapestry. And again, on this one, there's only one pledge level. It's $50. That will get you the deluxe edition of Vivid Memories. And again, it's going to fund on May 21st and hopefully, tentatively, deliver October 2021. Then this game just came in under the wire. I'm actually filming this on a Thursday. I'm hoping to get it edited up on Friday, and that way everyone will have the weekend to discover this video, and the earliest game's funding won't be until early next week. And that's going to be my plan moving forward here, is to get these videos shot on Thursdays, published on Fridays, and have like that weekend where people can kind of digest the videos and make some decisions. This 7th game I'm talking about actually just launched today, so it just made it in here, and I'm glad because this one, along with Hoplomachus, have very short campaigns. So yeah, these are situations where if I didn't slide this in here, it would be finished before I do the next video. Anyway, the campaign that I'm alluding to here is Railways of Sweden, Australia, and Rail Barons of the World. So these are expansions for Railways of the World. Now this campaign is going to fund on May 28th. It will hopefully tentatively deliver in February 2022. They had a funding goal for this of $17,000. They're currently sitting at $42,000, which is 2.5 times their funding goal. But remember, this campaign hasn't even been up for 24 hours. It's been up for half a day most when I'm recording this. By the time it publishes, it'll be up for a couple more days and it'll be doing even better, I'm sure. So Railways of the World is a train game. I guess it's a medium-heavy train game. It plays to 2 to 6 players, but a lot of that depends on what maps you're using. And I'm going to talk about each of these things a little bit separately as I get down into this one because they are designed by different people and they kind of work at different player counts. But I would put the risk on this one at low because it's being done by Eagle Games, who does Age of Steam, Railways of the World, Baseball Highlights 2045, the Brass games, all the Lacerda games, the Vital Lacerda games, Rococo, and both versions of Through the Ages. Eagle Games is one of my favorite publishers. They put out some of the best produced games out there. Not quite on the same level as Chip Theory Games, but Chip Theory Games is very kind of head down, focused on very specific stuff. It's the same designer artist for everything, whereas Eagle Games is a publisher publishing games with different designers and artists. So they're publishing more stuff, and there's probably a little less quality control going on there, but it is very, very high, and they put out a lot of beautiful games and really well-designed games. Railways of Sweden is designed by Ola Nygaards, which this seems to be Ola's first big published design. Now, the art on Sweden and Australia is by Joao Tereso, and he has worked on The City and Struggle of Empires. Sweden is a 2 to 5 player game, so it's a map. It's a map for Railways of the World that plays 2 to 5 players. Australia is designed by Randall Lloyd, also has art by Joao, and that one is a 2 to 6 player game. And then Rail Barons of the World is a new card deck. It is designed by Randall Lloyd, John Albertson, and David Turksey. The only one there that has really a lot of solid credits is Turksey, who's done Anachrony, Kitchen Rush, Tekenyu, Obelisk of the Sun, and just a ton of other games. The card deck is designed to be played with many of the maps, 1 to 6 player maps, and it also includes solo play. It'll integrate with 7 or 8 of the maps in Railways of the World and give you a new solo mode to play with those maps. Now, if you just want that card deck, that Rail Barons of the World, this new deck, $14, that's the pledge level. If you only want Railways of Sweden, it's a $29 pledge. If you only want Railways of Australia, it's a $32 pledge. If you want the Transcontinental playmat, and we need to talk about this for a moment, because there is something in Railways of the World called the Transcontinental game. And it requires that you take the maps from the Eastern United States and the Western United States, you put them together, it becomes a giant map, it plays 2 to 6 players, it's enormous. And so now they've made a playmat version of it. The one other thing you need to play that though is something called the North America Spike Deck, which comes in Railways of North America. So if you own Railways of North America, you already have that deck. If you don't own Railways of North America and you're ordering the playmat, you need to get that deck. But you can order it separately through the Pledge Manager. And you can even order the playmat and the Spike Deck through Eagle Griffin Games' website. So if you're not interested in this campaign at all and you just want those things, you can do that through their website. However, if you're interested in this campaign and you're going to be paying for shipping already through the campaign, and you also want the playmat and the deck, it makes sense to get it through the campaign and just kind of combine shipping. So there's a $59 pledge, which will just get you the playmat, and that's almost exactly what it would cost over at the website. You can also add on that deck for $10, which is the same thing that would cost through the website. But the deck doesn't include a separate pledge. The Spike Deck, the deck that you need to play on the Transcontinental map, which is different from the Rail Barons of the world, which is the first pledge level, which is $14. And that's the one that you're going to be able to integrate that deck into many of the maps and use it to play solo on 7 or 8 of the maps. So if you want everything in this campaign, what you should do is pledge the $72 pledge, which will get you all of the new stuff. And then if you also want the playmat added on in the pledge manager, you will be able to do that, along with the spike deck, which will be $10. So if you're getting all those things, you're going to pledge the $72 everything new pledge level. And then when you add on those other two things, your total will be $141 plus whatever your shipping is for wherever you are. This will fund on May 28th, and it will hopefully deliver tentatively February 2022. Now, the next game I'm about to talk to you about is the only high-risk game that I'm highlighting in this video. It's called Ice, and it's going to fund on May 31st. It will tentatively deliver in April 2022. Their funding goal for this was $54,000. They're currently sitting at $154,000, which is about 3 times what they were asking. It is a medium light 1 to 5 player game. It's an exploration game that uses worker placement and action points. There are a lot of tiles on the game. The whole board is just all of these tiles, but it's not a tile placement game because all of those tiles are going to be set up there at the beginning of the game, and then players will be removing them. I guess in that sense, it could be like Fossilis or something, maybe even Garinto. So it will require a little bit of setup to get all these tiles placed out, but it's not a tile placement game because you're not placing tiles during the game. You're going to be removing them. And it's kind of Euro-y the way it works, removing the tiles and stuff. So the reason that this is a high-risk game is it's a first-time publisher this way. It is 2 first-time designers, Bragu and Samson Perret, and it is a first-time artist named Leonard Dupont. So these are kind of all first-timers, but the game looks good. So, you know, you're taking a little bit of a risk, I guess, doing this. It's a new outfit, new kind of people. There's not a history behind here, but the game itself looks pretty solid. So on this one, for $80, you're going to get the core box with all of the stretch goals. If you pledge at $120, you're going to get a collector's box version. Now, what that means in this campaign is that you will get a magnetized board. And I think that will probably help if it's constructed properly. It'll probably help with the tile setup because it'll grab those tile pieces and kind of help put them where they need to go. There's metal coins. There'll be dual layered player boards, custom shaped meeples, and screen printing on the meeples. So all of those things sound really good to me. And like, you know, if money is not an issue and you're not trying to like watch your budget too much, I think if you pledge this game, you probably want to go for the collector's box because it's going to make the experience of playing it that much more joyful and blinged out. But you know, it is more than the core box. So again, Ice, it's by some unknowns here. So, you know, if you are really risk averse, you may not want to back this. But if you're feeling like you want to help some first-time designers, a publisher that look like they're heading in a really good direction with what they're doing, it's going to fund on May 31st, deliver hopefully April 2022. Now, the last game here is Vengeance Roll and Fight. This will also fund on May 31st. It's going to hopefully tentatively deliver in February 2022. They had a funding goal of $10,000. They're currently sitting at $41,000, so about 4 times their asking price. It is a medium-heavy game. It is for 1 to 8 players, if you put 2 games together, I think. And I would put the risk on this one at medium-low. Now, it is a roll-and-write game, and it is a real-time game, and it is based on Vengeance, the board game, which was sort of a action movie in a box. So think Kill Bill or John Wick, or an old Akira Kurosawa samurai movie, maybe something like Yojimbo, or the spaghetti westerns. But essentially, like, it's an action movie where your character's been wronged, and you're going to fight these hordes of enemies and try to kind of take your revenge and kill everybody. The criticism that the original Vengeance game gets is that it's got a lot of miniatures that don't really do anything. So it's cool because you're going to place them on the board, and it's going to have a lot of theme because you're going to be running around trying to sort of use a dice mechanism puzzle to fight all these guys. But they're just kind of sitting there out there on the board, especially if you're playing solo play. It feels like they're just completely cosmetic and something that could be produced using tokens. So I think that has been a criticism for Vengeance. Just know that going in. If it doesn't bother you, it doesn't bother you, cool. Because you can get vengeance through this campaign. I'll talk about that in a moment. Anyway, Mighty Boards is the publisher here. They've done Days of Ire, Budapest 1956, and they've also produced Excavation Earth, Petrichor, Posthuman, and Vengeance. And it is sort of Gordon Kaleja's company. He's also one of the designers here. He has worked on Excavation Earth, Posthuman, and Vengeance, the original Vengeance. It is also co-designed with David Turksey and Nora Lee Lubbers, and they are a couple in real life as well. And they have another game coming out on the horizon, which is called Prison Architect Cardboard County Penitentiary. But David, I mentioned him earlier. He's worked on some other stuff in this video as well. So he's done a lot of stuff. I really like him. And Nora Lee may be working with him in the future quite a bit if they continue to be successful together as designers. Now, the art on this is by Alex Torvenius, who worked on the original Vengeance. So if you like that game, and I think it has a very distinctive art style that very much fits it, so that is going to carry over thematically from the original game to this roll and write real-time version. Now, there are actually 2 episodes here. So for $29, you can try it out. You can get Roll and Fight Episode 1, and you'll also get the Overkill promo pack. If you pledge at the $55 level, you will add in Episode 2. So that's right, all you crazy people. You can't get Episode 2 on its own. Why would you want to get Episode 2 if you haven't played Episode 1? But you can't do it. So $55 will get you both episodes. For the $79 pledge level, you are going to get Episode 1 with Vengeance, the Vengeance board game. So it's a separate entity, separate board game. I've already mentioned how there's kind of a split thought on that. The fact that it's really cool and it's an action game where you just go crazy on everybody. And then on the flip side, the fact that all these kind of like miniatures just stand around the board doing nothing. So if it doesn't bother you, maybe you want to pick it up. If it does bother you, maybe just go for the Roll and Fight. And then at the $99 level, you're going to get both episodes of Roll and Fight and the Vengeance base game. And again, this will fund on May 31st and deliver, hopefully, tentatively, February 2022. So that completes the Kickstarters that are funding for the rest of this month through the end of May, which means I will be back with another video in a couple weeks profiling the first couple weeks of June and what I think are the best Kickstarters that are available that will be completing funding in that period. But now let's move to the next section of this video where I talk about the games that I backed personally from the previous period. I can tell you right now that May is becoming a huge month for me. Like, I've been funding a lot of stuff in May. I'm hoping there's not that much stuff in June because I need a break. But I'm trying to get stuff that I want and stuff for the channel and stuff to show you guys. And there's been a lot of good stuff. So some of that stuff I'll talk about next video. The stuff that I just mentioned that I'm backing from this video. But the stuff that I'm backing from the previous video, let's talk about those games right now. So first up is Canvas Reflections, which is a really cool little painting themed game that uses these kind of sleeve cards where you can kind of put cards on top of cards and create a tableau. It's a technology that looks very similar to what's used in Gloom and Mystic Vale and Edge of Darkness and the upcoming Dead Reckoning. And it's just kind of a simpler, family-friendly, like a very cool, brilliant painting game with this very interesting mechanic with the cards. And I think it looks beautiful. I didn't back it the first time around because I own 2 other painting themed games. It's been getting such a big reception. So many people like it. I thought I should pick it up this time around during this expansion campaign. So I got the original stuff as well. Then I also went crazy with HEXplore It. So there's a new HEXplore It campaign that was on Gamefound for a new version of the game called The Domain of Mirza Noctis. There are now 4 games in the series. I went ahead and I backed them all. I did the all-in and I got the storage chest. And these are very interesting games. They're very kind of mathy. They're sort of dungeon crawlery. But it's very, very math specific. And I think a lot of people may not like the way everything just gets crunched in numbers. I don't mind that. And it could end up being a game that I play solo in the middle of the night because I'm a weirdo by myself, crunching the math. But the campaigns and the games looked really cool to me. So I just went crazy and backed everything, and we'll see when I get it. If I don't like it, it's going to be a big pledge to sell. But I'm excited for it right now, and I jumped in with both feet. After that, I pledged It's a Wonderful Kingdom. Now, I did not pledge It's a Wonderful World back in the day. It just looked like another cube pusher to me. A pretty good one, but I have a lot of cube pushers. I wasn't really thinking that I needed another one. But I did like the sort of legacy and the campaign elements of it. And I was actually hoping to pick it up through It's a Wonderful Kingdom, through that campaign, but they weren't offering it. So I wasn't able to pick it up. So hopefully they'll do another campaign for It's a Wonderful World later. Maybe I'll pledge it then. And in the meantime, I'm going to satisfy myself with It's a Wonderful Kingdom, which is like It's a Wonderful World, but it's sort of rethemed in a fantasy setting, and it's more specifically for 1 to 2 players. So I think it'll be really great. It'll be something that my fiance and I can play by ourselves, just the two of us, and kind of get through it and see what we think about it. And then I'll know later if I actually want to go for It's a Wonderful World, which does play up to 4 players. I was really excited about Kingdom, I think partly because I missed out on World and it looks cool and I like the campaign style of it. And I think with this one, I was even a little more excited just knowing that it can be this kind of experience that my fiance Kristen and I have together. I also backed Keyper at Sea, and I like Richard Breeze. I think he's a really unique, great designer. I'm a huge fan of Keyflower. I added that one to my collection not too long ago. This was an expansion for Keyper. So it's an expansion called Keyper at Sea. There was a little bit of an issue with the Kickstarter because they were originally not offering the base game. And they had something called a character edition, which was a super amped up version of the base game that had all these really cool special edition meeples, screen printed meeples, like a lot of unique meeples. And I really wanted to get that character edition, but they had a limited quantity and it sold out very quickly. And then there was no other version of the base game available. There was no, like just the normal base game was not included. And so I was thinking what I was going to do with this. Am I going to pledge the expansion without the base and try to get the base on my own? And then they added on the base game and I was very happy. And so I pledged it. And then at some point, one of those people who pledged the limited edition, the character editions, backed out on their pledge, and there was one of those available, so I changed my pledge to that. So I'm now getting the character signature edition, I think it's called, and the new Keyper at Sea expansion, and I'm super excited. I think Richard Breeze is awesome. I also pledged my father's work, which is a very cool, very dark themed worker placement game about mad scientists. It seems a little bit similar to something like Abomination, which is also popular, but has some detractors because people think for a lighter game, it goes on way too long. But now there's a way in Abomination to play a shorter version of the game that the designer has finally put out. But I like the theme. I like the dark theme. I like the mad scientist theme. In my father's work, you're actually going to play 3 different generations of mad scientists. So there will be eras in the game where you're going to pass on certain parts of your work to future generations, and I think that's really cool as well. Now, it also had an app integration, so it requires the app to play, which could be a problem for some people. Not everybody likes apps in their games. The publisher, Renegade Games, though, has kind of gone to bat and said they're going to really support the app, and if somewhere down the line, years and years from now, they stop supporting the app, they will make it public domain. That's good enough for me. I don't need a guarantee that the game is going to work in 30 years, but I would like to know it's going to work for the next 10 years. And I feel confident that that will be the case. And then last of all, I backed Stationfall, which is designed by Matt Eklund and published by Ion Game Design. Matt makes very heavy games, and he works with Sierra Madre Games. They're sort of a sub-imprint of Ion Games. Phil Eklund is his father, who's designed a lot of games like the BIOS series and the PAX series, and Matt has worked on those series. Stationfall is being billed somewhat as a party game for heavy gamers, and I watched a playthrough that they did on heavy cardboard, and there are just a lot of characters involved in this. People are in a very poorly designed space station. People are going to be playing some number of the characters that are involved in any game. So in a game, you may have, like, let's say you have 4 players and you're going to have, let's say, 16 characters involved. So you're going to be controlling some of those characters on your turns, and you can kind of switch it up from turn to turn. And then at some point in the game, you may reveal that you are a specific character, and at that point, the other players can no longer control that character. But it's this weird kind of hodgepodge trader game where everyone kind of has their own agendas. Some people want to damage the spaceship and blow it up. Other people want to get off it. Basically, there is just a lot of horrible things happening with this spaceship. And as the game goes on, the characters who are not aware of all of these situations in the beginning will find out as the game goes on. It almost feels like some weird high concept comedic version of Nemesis where you're not necessarily fighting with aliens, you're just dealing with mass chaos and all of these different personalities and philosophies and agendas regarding this spaceship. So just mass chaos on a spaceship, people with all of these conflicting agendas, trying to do the things that they want to do, possibly at others' expense, possibly not. But it looks fascinating to me, and I think with the right group of people, it could just be fun insanity. So I'm excited for Stationfall. I think it's going to be very cool. So those are the games I backed this period. Probably far too many games in May. And there's going to be even more games that I'll be talking about when I do the Kickstarter update for June, because I'll be talking about the games that I backed this period, which were still May funders. So my wallet needs a bit of a rest, and as does this space in my apartment. But I am excited for so many of these games that I had to do it. I had to. Let us now talk about the games that I've acquired into my collection since the last video, starting with Kemet Blood and Sand. So I've heard a lot of good things about some of these dudes on the map games. I haven't played all of them. I haven't played Innis. I still haven't played Kemet. So when they did the new Kemet campaign, it seemed like a great time to jump on and do that. I went all in on it. I was actually punching the game the other day, and I was not particularly happy at their rulebook. They don't have components listed in the rulebook at all. Like nowhere in the package are the components listed. So I almost kind of had to learn the rules to figure out how to store the components. And there are still some components in that storage box that I'm not sure where they're used in the game or how they're going to be stored in the future, but I've got them stored for now and everything feels good. For a Kickstarter and some of these things that are very well produced. I mean, the pieces look great for Kemet Blood and Sand. Like I was happy with the little miniatures, and I was happy with all of the components for the board and all that stuff. And they have a little bit of a game tray system that works for the tiles, but man, guys, you need something in your game talking about the storage and the components. Almost every rulebook has kind of a component list in the front, at least in some way. They combine it with kind of like the setup, but Kemet's was really lacking. So I'm very excited to play Kemet. I think it's going to be an awesome game. I've heard great things about it. I was a little displeased at the situation with the unpacking and the punching. I also acquired Merchant's Cove, which I'm going to be playing very soon. I'm very excited. I went all in on that one. It is a very asymmetric player game where players are different merchants in a fantasy type setting. They're going to be selling their goods to different merchants that arrive at the Cove. But the cool thing about Merchant's Cove is that everybody is playing a different vendor. And there are, I think there are 4 to 5 vendors in the base game, along with someone called the Peddler, who you're going to be playing against if you do the solo game. And then there were 3 more vendors that you could get separately as add-ons: the Oracle, the Dragon Rancher, and the Innkeeper. And it looks so good. I'm really excited for this game. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. It's not going to be asymmetric, complicated on the level of Root. And I've seen some people being surprised about that. I never expected that, because when I was looking at the Kickstarter, I actually read the Kickstarter and looked at the Kickstarter. So I am really excited for an asymmetric game where everybody is playing their own kind of heads down player game and working with different mechanics on their player board. But then they're all competing on the same main board to sell all of these goods. And I like the fact that it is this asymmetric game that will hopefully appeal to lighter gamers who like kind of more medium light stuff. It looks really well designed and a lot of fun for that kind of complexity level. I just acquired My City. It is a game that seemed to be sold out everywhere, but I was able to order it through Barnes & Noble, I think. And it is a kind of tile placement legacy game. And I've just heard really good things about it. And I think it's a game that I want to play soon with my fiance, Kristen. I think she's going to like it. I think I'm going to talk about this a little bit later in my channel update, because I'm going to put a channel update at the end of this video, because I have a few things that I want to kind of let you guys in on in terms of what's coming. So I have a bunch of these first impressions videos I'm going to be getting through. I'm going to talk about it in the channel update. But after I get through them, the next thing I'll be doing is probably launching a Twitch channel and starting to do some live plays on Twitch. And I think the first 2 games I may do on that channel will be maybe Machikoro Legacy, followed by My City. I feel like those are going to be 2 lighter games that I will be able to do on Twitch while I kind of learn the ins and outs of Twitch. I think if it's a little rough, it'll be okay. I think it's a lot better me trying to start with something like that rather than just jumping into like Gloomhaven. So I'll probably start with one or both of those games, and I'm really excited to finally get to play My City. And I think it'll be a pretty cool way to kick things off with the Twitch channel, assuming that everything kind of proceeds as I envision it happening. I also acquired Santa Monica, and I bought that lightly used from a good friend. And I'm a huge fan of Cat Lady. Kristen and I both really love Cat Lady. I think it's one of the best little light games out there. It's going to be in my collection forever. I see no reason to ever get rid of it. I think it's really good. I mean, the gameplay, the art style, everything just comes together so perfectly for such a good little light game. And Santa Monica looks to be more of that. I like what I'm seeing in terms of the card play and kind of building this tableau on the Santa Monica Boulevard and then scoring points with different workers that well, they're not workers, they're meeples, and you kind of move them around as part of your actions, and you're trying to get them to different places for sort of the scoring at the end of the game. But it looks a lot of fun. I'm probably actually playing that one later today or tomorrow. I also received Shasn, which I'm really excited about. It's this voting game from India, and there are several different kind of modules, so you can play different countries' elections. It's not one of these games like these Trump-themed games or games that are trying to sort of benefit off of knee-jerk reactionism over what's been going on in the US for the last 5 years. Because really, I want none of those games. I want nothing that's trying to take a political stance about America right now. I have my own feelings about that, and strong ones. I feel like it's best to keep it out of board games, especially right now. But this is not like that. This is just a election-themed game, much like Campaign Trail, which also looks really good. I don't own Campaign Trail, but those look like 2 really good kind of election-themed games that stand on their own and aren't trying to be topical. So they're not a game that's going to become really successful based on what's sort of happening at the time, but it's also not going to fade away because it's no longer topical. It's just good game mechanics, smart game mechanics. And Shasn, the design of that game, seems to be very much operating kind of under the surface and breaking down how different political systems operate and work, and then making the gameplay kind of come out of that. So I don't know a lot of people that are talking about Shasn. I don't really see it out in the wild. So I feel like I do want to get a video produced for this one soon as well, because it's not out there. And I think people need to see Shasn. They need to hear more about Shasn. And I need to play Shasn to tell you what I think about it. But it looks good. And then the last thing that I acquired was the little mini expansion for Yedo called Unpleasant Surprise. I still haven't gotten Yedo to the table, but when I do, I'm excited to play this as well. So those are the games that I acquired during this period, which brings us to the played game section. And there's only one of those games, and that game is Red Rising. And interestingly enough, I'm about to, when I finish shooting this, go and shoot a first impressions video for Red Rising. So I probably don't want to talk about it too much. I will say I really, really like Red Rising. I think it's a good light game. I was not a huge fan of Tapestry, which was Stonemeyer's game that they put out sort of 2 games ago. And I didn't even bother with Pendulum because I didn't want a real-time game. I'm not a big real-time game fan. So Pendulum I knew was just not for me. I didn't buy it. I would like to maybe play Pendulum at some point once just to kind of experience it, but I'm pretty sure it's not a game for me. So I had originally really liked Stonemeyer's output. I mean, Scythe, I'm a huge fan of. Wingspan, I love. Viticulture, I think, is amazing. I still haven't played or acquired Euphoria, Build a Better Dystopia, but I'd like to. And I was fully on board with Stonemaier kind of early on with their first half dozen games. But lately they've been putting out things that just haven't been as exciting to me. So I didn't really know where Red Rising was going to land. It is also based on a book series, and I haven't read the series. I may read the series now because I'm liking the game, and I've heard mixed things about the series, but a lot of good things, so I think I may give it a try. I need to get through some of the Game of Thrones books that I'm in the middle of right now first. Red Rising has less going on than a lot of the other Stonemaier games. It is a lighter, more simple game, at least in presentation and look. There are still really good decisions to be made in Red Rising, which is why I like it. And it is very, very similar to Fantasy Realms, if you've ever played Fantasy Realms. And again, I say this now and then in my videos, but I'm more of a heavy gamer. I don't necessarily like lighter games as much. And the reason is I just want to have agency, and I want to have really interesting, sort of more complicated, more complex things to do. So when I do look for lighter games, I just like to find games that have good choices in them, even if they're light. And I think Fantasy Realms is definitely one of those games. So is Cat Lady. So is Patchwork. I mean, there are lighter games out there that I really, really enjoy. So is Rome by Ryan Laukat. So they do exist. It's just that in my collection, I tend to not focus on the light games. And when I'm getting a lighter game, I'm a lot more specific about what I'm looking for. And I choose to buy, and I keep fewer of them. Red Rising will be staying in my collection for quite a while because I really, really like the gameplay. And it is very similar to Fantasy Realms. Now, if you haven't played Fantasy Realms, basically you are drafting cards and you're curating a hand of cards, and you want these cards to score off each other in the best way possible. So having one card score well may mean that you need certain other cards to go with that. But then if you have certain other cards, that may make other cards that you're scoring not work as well. So there's kind of interconnections between how everything scores and how they gain more points or lose points. So you're sitting there with this hand of cards in Fantasy Realms and Red Rising, and you're trying to figure out the best way to get these to work together and what you want to remove and what you want to put in to maximize those points at the end of the game. Now in Fantasy Realms, that's all it is. When a certain number of cards, I think, come out on the table, the game ends. And that's it. It's just this kind of like selecting cards and discarding cards and trying to put together the most highly scoring hand that scores more points than everybody else. So you're also doing that in Red Rising, but Red Rising adds in a few more mechanics. You are getting things like helium crystals, which will score points at the end of the game. You're moving up a scoring track. You are putting influence cubes down. You've got a die roll that you may roll, which may get you some kind of random resources if you do something else. So it kind of takes Fantasy Realms and then it adds on all these other little kind of mechanics to it, and a smaller board as well. And I like it. I don't think you need both games. I think either game works fine. And I think they're very close in what they do. Red Rising is a little more fiddly because it's got kind of these additional mechanics, and that may be something that you like, that you think adds more choices and variability to the game. And I think, maybe it does. But you may be like my fiance, where you feel like it just adds in too much extra fiddliness and all you want to deal with is the cards. And if that's the case, then maybe you're better off with Fantasy Realms. But for me, I think the games play so similarly, I don't really have a preference over either one. I just think they're both really, really good. And one does things a little bit differently because it adds on a few different mechanics, but it's neither better nor worse to me. I would just say, if you already have Fantasy Realms, you probably don't want to go out and buy Red Rising. At least play it first, because I don't think you'd want to have both in your collection. Now, my only kind of negative about Red Rising is there are so many different colors of cards, and many of those colors of cards are similar. So you've got, white and silver and gray, and you've got copper and gold and yellow. And there are just a lot of cards that look very similar to other cards. I don't know if they could have found like a wider variety of colors so they wouldn't have some of these colors that are kind of so similar to each other, which can make the curation of your hand a little confusing. Also, if you're colorblind, it could be a big problem because you're going to have several very similar colors that could be confusing. But then if you throw in like if you have trouble distinguishing green and red, and there's kind of 3 or 4 different kind of red cards and 3 or 4 different kind of green cards, I feel like it could get to be a little bit of a nightmare. So that's something to be aware of. And I think even if you're not colorblind, a lot of the colors are similar to each other. Now, it doesn't bother me at all, but it was sort of a point of contention for my fiance, so I thought I should mention it. But I really like Red Rising. Be looking for my first impressions video. This video will probably get posted tomorrow, Friday, which means my Red Rising video will probably get posted later in the day on Friday as well. So just be looking for it. And then, well, you know what? I'm starting to get into the channel update, so let's just go ahead and do that. When I originally started doing all these videos, I wanted to do these twice monthly updates, which I'm going to be continuing doing. I wanted to do my game of the month, which I'm going to be continuing to do. And I wanted to do first impressions videos and full teach-in reviews. And I had a bunch of games that I wanted to do first impressions videos on. Now, my output has not been as productive as I would like, with a lot of personal reasons that go along with that, including us having a new puppy right now who is loud a lot of the day. I also don't have my upstairs shooting space completed yet, so I'm still kind of working on that while I'm doing this. I also have a couple little personal projects I kind of needed to get taken care of. I have a big comic book collection I'm trying to sell, so I need time to kind of get that out of here. And that's partly how I'm going to be continuing to fund this work moving forward until I eventually get a Patreon up, which will probably happen at the end of the summer. So I do need to kind of have some time to get those comics sold, and I also have some video games I'm trying to sell as well. So they're just kind of a lot of things I'm balancing. We also got COVID vaccinations this month, 2 different shots, and it took my fiance and I out of things for a while. Her more than me, but that also meant that I had to kind of take over more with the puppy for, a week or 2, which meant less time to be shooting and writing and editing and playing games. What that all amounts to is that I had a slate of games I wanted to do these first impressions video, but time is now passing, and some of those games are from the end of 2020. And the idea behind first impressions videos is that they will give you a first impression of the game when it's brand new, before there are a lot of videos out, before I've even played it a lot, but it's my way to try to show you the game, show you the mechanics, and tell you what I think of it, just having played it maybe once or twice, just so you get a little bit to help you make a decision. And then my plan was always to go back later and do a full teach and review. The problem here is I have a backlog of first impressions videos that I wanted to produce for games that are no longer that recent. So I have kind of taken a big knife cut and cut out a bunch of those games. They're gone. I'm not going to do first impressions videos for them. Hopefully I will get to full teach and review videos for them. The other thing is that some of my first impressions videos have been going very long, almost into the realm of full teach and reviews. So I think as I move forward, I'm going to try to scale them back and get those first impressions videos to be what they were originally intended to be, which is a 10, 20-minute video tops to show you the mechanics of the game and give you my initial impressions on it. And I want to be able to pump these videos out very quickly and then still have time each week to do some full teach and reviews. That said, I'm going to tell you what the new first impressions kind of slate is, kind of what my intended video output is. And hopefully these first impressions videos will be shorter and I will be able to move on to my full teach and reviews sooner. If you're liking what I've been doing with first impressions videos so far, here is what is probably coming. Here's my slate, my production slate for the next couple months. So I mentioned already, Red Rising is going to be next. After that is going to be Maglev Metro, and that should probably be landing on Saturday of this week. Now from there, I still have 4 games that came out at the very end of 2020 that I'm going to try to get first impressions of videos out for if I can do it quickly within the next couple weeks. So those games include Cloud Age, Curious Cargo, Merv, and Kanban EV. From there, I'm going to be profiling the games that I have gotten in recently. Now, those games are a lot of the acquired games I just mentioned. So I've got Kemet, Blood and Sand, Merchant's Cove, Shasn, Import-Export Definitive Edition, Hallertau, Praget Caput Regni, and Stronghold Undead. So that is going to be the next slate of first impressions videos after the ones from late 2020. From there, I have also acquired or am acquiring some retail games. So I would like to be able to also show you guys some retail games when they're brand new. Some of those are going to be arriving soon. Some of those are pre-ordered, so they should arrive like when they're new. And that slate will include Ashes Reborn, the 2 new Imperium games, Imperium Classics and Imperium Legends from David Turksey, Anno 1800 from Martin Wallace, and Coffee Traders. And then also I'm getting Cosmic Frog, which I think I'm going to throw in there, which actually published. It published at the end of last year in December 2020, but it seems to be a game that everyone's really enjoying that still has not that much content out there. So I'll probably do that one as well. And then the games that I will be acquiring the rest of this month, which will also get the first impressions treatment going forward over the next couple months, which will be Legacies, Oath Chronicles of Empire and Exile, and Time of Legends Destinies. And then the games I'm acquiring next month that are kind of coming in, the Kickstarters that will be arriving that I'm planning on doing first impressions videos for are Amsterdam, Hamburg. Those are the 2 kind of redesigns of Stefan Feld games. Yeah. And Embarcadero, Madeira, Tsukuyumi Full Moon Down, and Unsettled. So that, in that order, more or less, is going to be my upcoming slate of first impressions videos. And that should take me through the next couple months, 2 or 3 months. Now, as I get further into that, I'm going to be also working in full teach and reviews. So that will be coming as well. I'm also now fully vaccinated. I should be 2 weeks past my second shot next Friday, which means I'm going to be able to start recording videos with one of my intended collaborators. I'm very excited about that. And his name is Ryan Everly. He's into some games that I'm also into, like Euros, but he's also into some games that I'm not as well versed in as he is. He knows more about some kind of more medium light games, and he's also hugely into dungeon crawlers. So I think between the 2 of us, there's going to be a really good balance of knowledge between games. And I'm really looking forward to getting him in here. Now, before I do that, while I am working on this slate of first impressions videos, and while I am cleaning out the upstairs and getting it set up into a studio space, getting some of those comic books sold, and just getting things set up and decorated, and upgrading my equipment, which is going to be happening as well over the next couple months. And while all of that is happening, I'm also playing some remaining 2020 games that I need to get played to see what I think of them. So as all of these things kind of reach their culmination, I will be doing my best of 2020 list, which will probably be a 25 game list. So I'm still playing some of the games for that, replaying some games, seeing where everything fits. But that will get published, and that will kind of like finish off me catching up with my first impressions videos, catching up with my 2020 games. You'll see this nice list from me, my favorite, best 2020 games. Once I'm done with that, Ryan's going to join me, and we are going to do together our top 100 list. That will be a big event that we'll do together that will kick off him joining the channel. Also around that time, I will launch a Patreon, and we'll probably use the top 100 list to kind of help get some attention on the Patreon. And then as the year goes on, as we get deeper and deeper into the year, Ryan and I will do some videos together, and as we kind of get more settled and more caught up with first impressions videos, and we do more, full reviews and things. And he and I will decide, maybe we'll do some things together, maybe we'll do some things separately. We originally had planned to do a podcast together, so that eventually will come. There are a couple other people who may be involved in the podcast as well. We'll see. Right now, I'm just focusing on Ryan, though. And then the other big thing that this is all leading up to, which I hope to get launched by the end of the year, is a Twitch channel, which I mentioned a little earlier when I was talking about my city. And we'll see how I can kind of balance everything, the Twitch channel with the YouTube channel. But my plan with the Twitch channel is to stream at least a few times a week. I'll figure out what the programming is going to be and when it's going to be. So there may be some evening things, there may be some weekend things, but I anticipate sometimes we'll be playing new games that I want to show off. but I think there'll be a lot of focus on campaign and play as well. So I believe what will happen as we move forward is we'll still be doing the first impressions videos when we get new games in. I'll be doing the full teach and reviews. And then some of these big campaign games that I'll be getting in, I think we're going to play them over Twitch and, playing things like Arkham Horror, the card game, and Too Many Bones, and Cloudspire, and Sleeping Gods, and Dice Throne Adventures. And then as things come in over the next year, a lot of these really cool campaigns, ISS Vanguard, and Primal Awakening, and just a lot of huge, because I love campaign games. I love these kind of huge narrative campaign games, and I want to be able to share them with you and kind of build a community around some of this stuff. And I think Ryan will be involved. He'll be a great person to have there, especially for the dungeon crawlers. At some point, we'll probably do a big Midara stream that'll go on for a while. So this is all in the making. And as we launch the Patreon and we launch the Twitch channel, we'll get into all this. And we're going to take it kind of piece by piece. We'll see how it all goes. But I'm very excited where all of this will eventually, hopefully, grow into. I made a decision at one point, which was, who do I want to be focusing my energies on? Do I want to be focusing my energy on board game companies or on people? And I decided people. So for now, what that means is I do not see myself doing paid previews or doing Kickstarter previews. The way I want to see this channel and the Twitch channel and everything I do evolve as I move forward is I don't want to be doing paid work for companies. I don't want to have that affiliation. I want to be able to look at games as pieces of art and talk about them when they're very successful as pieces of art, and also talk about them when they're unsuccessful. And that's okay, because nobody produces a home run every time. Sometimes we expect that. And I think we need to say, hey, it's okay if our favorite designer has some swings and misses. It's okay to talk about that in a game. And it's okay to really celebrate when they have these huge home runs. All of that's okay. So I don't want to be picking anything apart, but I do want to talk about when things are really successful, when things are less successful, and really celebrating everything that board games can be. And I want to do that without having to worry about placating publishers. Now, I don't want to create any bad blood between publishers. I want to have good relationships with them. So I'm not looking to be mean for mean's sake or destroy games. I want to talk about what is good about games, what people may like about games. Sometimes there may be a game that you may say, hey, this game is objectively not that great, but I really like it because I like these things about it. So those are the kind of conversations I want to be having. And I want to really, I think if I'm catering to board game companies or consumers, I want to focus on the consumers. So that means that I'm not going to have money coming in from board game companies. I'm not going to be taking money to make paid videos, which means as time goes on, I will be relying more and more on Patreon and on maybe even my own Kickstarters when I'm looking to get big equipment upgrades. Now, the last 2 years, because I've been running my website for 2 years and this YouTube channel for maybe about 6 months now, everything's been self-funded. And I'm working on this full time, and I'm not getting paid. So I'm kind of self-funding all of this on my own. And I think I can continue to do that for a while, for the foreseeable future. Like, I'm not worried about that going away. But I do know that as time goes on, as the years go by, I'm eventually going to need Patreon money and Kickstarter money coming in so that I get some pay for my time while I'm not out there working another job or doing other things. And I need to get kind of paid for my work, but I'm not looking to put the cart before the horse. So I will be providing content, and then as time goes on, trusting as time goes on that people will respond to that content and be able to do what they can do on Patreon, and that will be enough. So there's no worry about things going south and this going away. But as I go forward, I will need to set up things so that everything is kind of funded through crowdfunding, since I won't be taking money from board game companies. It'll be interesting to see if I can make that model work. I think some people do. For me, I'm just going to keep my head down and keep trying to produce quality content and keep producing better quality content, upgrading my equipment and my gear and learning from what I'm doing, and hoping that as I do that, the road will reveal itself forward. But the plan is to eventually launch a Patreon and a Twitch channel. And I'm very excited about the Twitch channel. There's a lot of that is what I'm kind of aspiring to in the long term. Anyway, that is kind of a general plan. Hopefully those first impressions videos and what's coming on the immediate horizon is exciting, and definitely let me know down below, of those games I mentioned, which ones you guys are most excited for me to produce, and I'll try to make sure I prioritize that. In the future, as I get into Patreon, I definitely will have a lot of Patreon involvement in the kinds of videos that I'm producing and the games that I'm featuring in those videos. So I'm looking forward to moving into that space as this channel and this enterprise evolves, because I still do have that website, which I'm maintaining every day as well, in which I do daily roundup posts of all the games that launched on Kickstarter the previous day. So that's going to be ongoing for a while, until at some point in the future I may have to not do that, as Twitch evolves and I just don't have time to do everything. But if that content goes away at some point in the future, it will probably just shift into video content, much the way the Kickstarter this column did already. So there's a peek at kind of my plans for the future of this channel through the end of the year. Hopefully that's exciting. It's exciting to me. I'm really excited about Twitch. I'm really excited about Patreon. I'm really excited about Ryan joining me. I'm excited about my top 2020 list. I'm excited about doing my top 100 list with him. And I'm just excited to see what he and I come up with when we put our heads together. Hopefully you will agree that there's a lot of good stuff coming. So please take this opportunity to subscribe and like, and I will see you probably later today with a Red Rising video, first impressions, and tomorrow with that Maglev Metro first impressions video. And then in the near future, my goal here is to get 5 first impressions videos put out every week starting next week. We'll see how that goes with real life, but that is the goal. Thank you for watching. Thank you very much for taking time out of your day to listen to me, and I will see you very soon in that Red Rising first impressions video. And take a look at Kickstarter. See if any of these games that I talked about today are something that appeals to you that you may want to personally back. I think there are a lot of good gems in there. So have a great weekend. Much love from Think Outside the Board, and until the next time.